Welcome to the Zachrilege cast podcast, YouTube video, interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist / secular / awesome community. This is episode number 137. I am recording live on April 1st, 2018. That's right, April Fool's Day and Easter Sunday. I'm not enough of a comedian to pull that joke off, so feel free to fill in your own. Thank you to the fabulous Bobby and Miss Ashley for being on last week and taking us through the end of No Religion Required. They will still do their thing with Jerry DeWitt every Wednesday night, Hope After Faith and Hope After Dark, because they can't do PG-13 with Miss Ashley. So the cliffhanger is over. The last time I had Matthew on my show, he disappeared with 5 minutes to go, and I'm sad to say, or happy to say, he was not raptured. I believe his computer decided to cock him up. That was the story. So he returns, as does somebody else, in Jesus Returns, the rollicking sequel to Only an Atheist Can Help Save the World. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. 137 shows. Seriously, that is impressive.
I know I seem to be having people on that I had on like 2 years ago, and we'll get into the politics side of it. But yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, 2 years, really? Lots happened in that. And today I'm drinking this is from Catawba in North Carolina, peanut butter jelly time. Now I was telling Matthew before the show, when it comes to peanut butter sandwiches, I am a just peanut butter guy. Don't put any jelly on it. But this is nice, it's like a peanut butter, like raspberry kind of flavor, and it's solid. So what do you have today?
I have a Hefeweizen from a local brewery in Coventry that I was bought as a Christmas present. So it's very fruity, it's very cloudy. It's not what I usually drink, but it's actually not bad. So I'm quite enjoying it.
Excellent. I mean, I always think of like the craft beer in America and how crazy it is, and it's blown up. But it's probably the same in Europe too. I mean, you get you get to go many cultures, many different styles, and I'm sure it's quality stuff.
My understanding of America is that craft beer has taken off in a massive way, and I would bet that people have just gotten bored of drinking Budweiser or what Coors Light or whatever the bog standard beer is. Many years of drinking that, and you'll just be like, come on, I need something new. Yeah, Brewdog. We were talking about Brewdog a minute ago. They're a very good craft beer company in the UK that I'm a big fan of, but I'm gradually over time becoming an ever bigger fan of interesting beers and never drinking quite the same thing twice. It's quite an enjoyable way to spend an evening drinking lots of different things.
That is true. Now, because, I mean, you're not a podcaster, but you're a writer. You do, blog, and you had a couple of books. Sometimes I ask the question, like, do people drink when they're, producing a podcast? And in some cases, yes. In most cases, no. But when you're settling down to write, is a beverage involved, or is it best to leave that for other times?
So I've been fairly fortunate in the last 5-6 years in that I've been in a position where I can treat writing as a job, and it's quite a nice place to be. I've had periods of unemployment because my wife has moved this around. I've had periods where I'm applying for jobs and I'm waiting for things to come up. And as anyone who's been in that position will tell you, it takes a ridiculously long time for the interview to come up, and you might get it or you might not, and you wait for the next one. So during that time, I tend to write. The book of mine you mentioned before, Only an Atheist Can Help God Save the World, I wrote that in 3 months in the summer of 2012, so quite a few years ago now. And then I self-published it on Amazon and Smashwords in the summer of 2015. Now, my wife and I had moved back to the UK from Canada. We've been living there for 5 years. And these periods in between gave me time to just kind of crack on with the writing thing and to do it every day. So my wife would get up, she'd go to work in the mornings, and then I would have the day and I would do my job searching and apply. And then I had time to write. And if you've got all day, you can get quite a lot done. You can get reading and writing and editing done. So that's when I've written my books. The main thing that I would say that I drink when I'm writing would be coffee and tea. I'm quite a fan of a really strong coffee, a good espresso or something like that. I'm not going to drink while I'm writing. That would be when I finish in the evenings if I fancy a beer. But I have been on a few podcasts where people are either getting very, very drunk or very, very high. And it's tremendously entertaining chatting to people while they just get completely smashed.
That's right. Last time we talked, you had been on a show that I had been on, and I'm trying to remember if it's still on. It's changed names like 6 times. There's like the Atheist podcast, is like Canadian. And then there are the Wayward Atheists, and I think I'm not even remember what it is anymore. But for me, the show started at 10. For you, the show started at like what? What time did the show start when you were on that one?
Oh God, that was like 3 a.m.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Fun though, it was tremendous fun, but it did start really, really late. As far as I know, that show's gone. I tried to find it and reach out to those guys in the last couple of weeks. Atheist podcast is gone. I don't know if Wayward is still around. Are they still around in some form, or have they completely done and dusted?
I think there was a breakup, like some people left, and then they started a new one. But I think it's called something like You're Wrong, and I know Dustin Dark is involved, but I'll look it up and let you know and see. Because when you're on shows, it's like, hey, I don't take it personally when you're on other shows. You can be polyamorous when it comes to shows, because we know the modern. Well, I definitely know, because my wife's a book publicist as well, that even when you're like a bestseller, you still have to market, and when you're self-published, that's definitely true. So Can you talk about you write the book, you edit, because that's what you do, because you never know when you're done. What was the process like for you trying to find like an agent and get like a book deal? And when did you just say, sod it, because we'll speak in your slang, do it yourself?
So I imagine I'm quite representative of the self-published community in that I wrote and finished the book, and then when you finish it, there's a huge sense of euphoria. You're just like, I can't believe I finished a book. It's amazing. And then the really difficult part starts, which is trying to find an agent. So you write a blurb, a letter to a publisher, to an agent, and you start sending it out. And I can only imagine the volume of submissions these people get on a daily basis. Like, they must just get so much volume, it's very difficult to deal with. And for the majority of them, I never got any kind of feedback or anything at all. Most of them just ignore you. They might respond, they might not. The best ones that I experienced would actually let you know something or other. They'd say, I enjoyed it, but I don't know what to do with it, or it needs work, or like some kind of feedback is always appreciated. I did get one that said, I really like it, but I just don't know what to do with it. I have no idea where to go with it then. So after you've after you've submitted it to 50, 60, 100 agents, eventually you get to the point of going, well, this is, at least in the traditional publishing route, this is probably not going to happen. And it's a bit of a sad thing, but at the same time you go, well, not every book's going to be published. And then you have a choice. You either put it away, move on to the next, try and do the same thing again, or you go the self-publishing route. And because of Amazon and because of Smashwords and because of other companies that now deal with self-published authors, you can actually just put it up there. You can put it on Amazon. You can get it. You can get a cover made professionally, costs you money, but you can. You can get it to the point where you think, well, that's as good as I'm going to be able to make it. And you can put it out and see what people make of it. So for me, my editor is my wife. She went through Only an Atheist. She's been through Jesus Returns. She's been through other books and other short stories and stuff that I have. I've finished, I've done, I want some feedback and some editing on. And then with Only an Atheist Can Help God Save the World, I eventually got to the point where I was like, well, why don't I just put it up there and see what people think? Like, even if I just get some feedback, it's worth doing. So I created a Twitter account. I started publicizing it myself. I wrote a load of blog posts on a whole range of different things in an attempt to try and get people reading what I'm doing and being interested. And then people such as yourself were very kind enough to let me come on their shows and chat about it, which is very much appreciated. And actually, you and other people in your position have actually read the book and given me feedback, which has been fantastic. So fast forward to a few years later, the sequel that I said I was never going to write is now done and out. My wife has been through it and given me some feedback. There's been some changes, and it's out into the world again. It's free for people to give it a look, see how they do, what they make of it, and for people like yourself to actually take the time to read it, which is very much appreciated.
Well, can you do kind of a plot summary of Only an Atheist Can Help God Save the World? And then, of course, as you mentioned, you weren't going to do a sequel. What made you decide a sequel? And then now I hear a trilogy is possible.
Yeah, indeed. I wasn't going to go a sequel because most of the best books I love don't have sequels. They're standalone books. And then I got really sick one day and I had the idea for it in like a fever dream where I was running a fever and just was like, oh, well, there's the idea for the next book. And once I'd had the idea, I couldn't not write it and see where it went and see if I enjoyed it. So Only an Atheist is a book where God gets word of the mess that we're making of our world with rising global temperatures, with increasing pollution, the extinction of species, plastic pollution, and so on and so forth. And he decides to come to our world to try and steer the course of humanity away from its own destruction. Unfortunately, since biblical times, he's lost control of his heavenly realm, and he's now an administrator in a very complex heavenly bureaucracy. So he can't really get anything done. He comes to Earth, he tries to influence us and see where we're going, and he recruits the help of an atheist called Jeffrey, and they go on somewhat of an adventure to try and get God a voice on our planet. Now, I'm going to spoil the end of the book, which is that he does not succeed. However, he does go back to heaven a changed being, and he does grow, and he reclaims control of the heavenly realm. In the sequel, which is called Jesus Returns, Here He Comes Again, his son has returned from a mission to another world, and he has now decided that he's going to follow in his father's footsteps, come to Earth, and try and succeed where his father has failed. He has quite clear daddy issues, which was quite entertaining to write. So the book follows his journey, following what his father did, but attempting to do things in a different way. And Jesus's role within the heavenly bureaucracy, within the heavenly structure, is to act as a force for change from within. He comes to a world, he assumes the body of a native, and then he sets about becoming famous on that world and then steering the course that civilization is on. So in this book, you mostly follow Jesus as he gets to Earth. You mostly follow what he does from there, and then his attempts to change the path of humanity, recruiting help from wherever he can get it on, wherever he can get it from, and then attempting to get laid in as many ways as he can.
Yeah, you have Jesus as a bit of a a bit of a player. Do you think that was just edited out of the Bible, or
I struggle to believe that he wouldn't have been a better player in the biblical times. A preacher like him, a man of influence, someone leading disciples, I would think he would be able to pursue anything he wanted to.
So why did you decide when Jesus returned to not have him do what he did the first time, is actually be born and be a child and actually be, as we say in America, a grown-ass man? What made you decide to put him into the body of an existing person? And of course, what part of the world is that? And why does that cause problems?
So the thing for Jesus is when he comes to earth, he's a very distinguished operator. He's been doing what he does for a very, very long time, and he has frankly gotten a little bit sick of it. It takes such a damn long time to be reborn into the body of a new person. I mean, traditionally in his history, he would have been born into the body of a virgin. There's nothing like a bit of divine providence to kickstart your legacy, your myth. But unfortunately for him right here and now, he just kind of wants to get on with it. And it just takes so long, 20 years of waiting around until you're an adult to be told that you're the son of God and you need to get on with your mission. So for him, he gets here and he's reborn into the body of an existing person. So unfortunately, that means that person no longer exists. But for him, it means the job gets on a lot quicker. In the book, he's not the brightest of sparks, nor is he the most diligent of people. So he doesn't generally do the work that he needs to do. As a result of that, he is reborn into the body of a man in the Middle East, because that's where he was the first time he came here. Unfortunately for him, when it comes to shaping the world that exists today, he decides to go to America to become a celebrity, but he's in the body of a Middle Eastern man, and that throws up all sorts of problems, because the way modern Christians and modern Catholics see Jesus is not as a Middle Eastern man. It's thoroughly white, it's good teeth and perfect hair, and that doesn't really sit all that well with who he was a couple of thousand years ago, and that causes him all sorts of problems.
It sure does. Yeah, I almost thought, man, Jesus should just get it like a YouTube channel, but you have him go through kind of the TV circuit. What causes him problems when he actually takes his trip to America? So
how far did you get in the book before we chat?
I finished. Now I don't want to, we're not, maybe the third act we'll let go, but this is kind of in the middle of the book, so we're not going to tell everybody, the ending.
Well, I wasn't sure when you want to discuss the book with someone. I wasn't sure whether you want to discuss what happens in the last chunk where there are dramatic.
True, I can say like spoiler alert for people who are actually like listening, but or we'll take the last part of the book off.
Yeah, that's fine. No worries. No problem. So the journey he goes on is to become a celebrity in America. He arrives in the Middle East. He becomes a celebrity there fairly easily. He's a magician, a trickster. He has an act that he's honed, and he talks to people. He builds up his following, and then from there he goes to America. The problem is in America, as we've said, he's a Middle Eastern man trying to become famous in America, and that's not a particularly easy thing to do. He runs into the problem of the television networks in America not liking anybody outside of their particular bubble, outside of their particular, what they have in mind for who should and shouldn't be famous. So when he starts to try to talk about things like environmentalism and that means of chatting to people, the right-wing networks, mostly the right-wing networks, don't really want him talking about these things. I mean, you guys in America have this system set up where a few television networks seem to have an awful lot of power. And if they don't want someone talking about something, they generally find ways to shut it down. They've been very effective with the gun control debate and with environmentalism and other things. So they build their case against him. And unfortunately for Jesus, he is not someone to worry about that kind of thing. He will sleep with anybody he wants to. He will take whatever drugs he decides to take. He will drink an exceedingly large amount of alcohol if he chooses to do so. And so building a case against him to demolish his career as it's going on is not the hardest thing for them to do. The demon from the first book, the guy, well, he's not a guy, he's a demon, he's not a guy. He comes back to act as the foil against which Jesus struggles. And of course, them building this case against him, it doesn't take too long and it's not too difficult to do. So his ascent to celebrity and his subsequent fall is all too rapid. And then, as you say, the book moves into its last third, about which we're apparently not going to talk very much.
Well, we got to give, we got to do a cliffhanger and hopefully not one where your, computer blows up. So we're going to try it this time, and we're going to see about getting people to, purchase the book, help this guy out. Come on, I mean, we have a lot of, when it comes to like atheist books, it's always very like scientific stuff, or like Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah.
We need more fiction in a way, and we can tell stories, but usually the stories about atheists are talking about like bad situations they had growing up. So having a little bit of a sense of humor and all that is good. So you seem to like the bad guys. What was it like? So you create this demon who causes a lot of problems in the first book and in the second book. But another character who people know from the Bible is Lucifer, and Lucifer's really involved in this plot. And so what was his kind of journey in this book? And do I hear that he might be a main character in the third edition?
Yeah, he'd definitely be a main character. So one of the feedbacks I got from the first book when I was talking to people, my mother read the first book. I don't think she's read the current one yet, but it's very interesting when you chat to people about these things, about how people see things differently. So you can say to someone, what did you like and what didn't you about the books? And you'll get completely different answers from completely different people. My mother thought Lucifer was one of the best characters in the first book. And I at a point where I was thinking about taking him out, because he doesn't do all that much in the first book. He's there for a brief scene. The plot hinges around what he does, but he's not really crucial. So I was thinking, well, I'll take him out and I'll find something else to do. My mother persuaded me otherwise, and I'm quite glad I left him in, because he does a similar thing in this book where he comes in the middle of the book. He doesn't do a huge amount, but he sort of acts as the pivot point around which the book operates. And then when it comes to the third book will be called, is called Lucifer and Lilith. So the first book was Only an Atheist Can Help God Save the World. Two main characters are God himself and an atheist who helps him on his crusade. Second book, Jesus Returns. The two main characters, well, the main character is Jesus. You could argue whether the second character is Melissa who helps him, or whether it's Lucifer, or whether it's Alfred. I'm not sure there is a defined second character. In the third book, it's going to consist mostly of, and I haven't written this yet, so I don't quite know where it's going to go, but it's mostly about Lucifer taking up the mantle which God and now Jesus have attempted to do, and employing the help of Jesus's daughter, Lilith. Now, as I said, I don't really know where this book's going to go. I don't really know what's going to happen in it yet. I just know who the characters are coming in, and I'm going to have to go away and have a think about it and see what happens with it. Going back to your point about there needing to be fiction in atheist literature, I completely agree. I think far too much of the atheist debate, or the religious debate, however you want to put it, is around facts. And I think there was an awful lot of fun to be had and humor to be found in playing with the characters that you find in the Bible, which is more or less what I'm doing. I'm playing with God, with Jesus, with Lucifer and some of the angels, and just generally having fun, telling a modern day story with these characters and making jokes at the expense of these people, which is really enjoyable.
Well, I assume your target audience is kind of like atheist community, but have you had any feedback from Christians who have read the books?
One of my wife's friends read it, and she's a Church of England goer, the English church. She enjoyed it, but said it was a bit too preachy from the atheist side, which I thought was interesting. I gave a free copy to somebody who asked for one, who was a religious blogger, heavy Catholic religious blogger. I was really curious to see what they made of it, but unfortunately they never got back to me with any feedback. So I'm guessing it just kind of got forgotten. I would be kind of curious to see what strongly religious people made of it, because it's very humorous with the religious characters. It's very, I wouldn't say blasphemous, but just kind of joyfully having fun with religious stereotypes and tropes.
Yeah, it's a subject that for someone who's a believer, it's sometimes hard for them to make light of certain aspects that you're like, well, come on, at least this part is ridiculous. Like the talking donkey, come on. But it's like you cut it off. One thing I've noticed, and I'm really going off the cuff today, like if I do a YouTube video and it's like an atheist video, I get either ads for like Christian movies or like suggestions for like Christian shows. When people like look up your books, do they get those kind of suggestions? Because, Jesus Returns, there's probably like religious, pro-Christian books that have titles very similar to that. Do you ever see that when you're doing like a search, like, oh, I'm getting associated with a very different kind of book than mine?
If you put Jesus Returns into Smashwords or Amazon, you do get a long list of books from all sorts of different sources. I was also kind of amused to find out that this is not the first book about the return of Jesus. Second Coming.
Come on. No, really?
No, really. Second Coming is a book by an established comedy writer, which I tried to read and didn't really get on with. And there's been a couple of others I've seen as well that are in a similar vein. I don't think anybody's done it quite like I have, which I would hope not. But it does seem like more and more people over time are kind of getting the idea to play with these characters and with this world. I mean, I think it's quite ripe for satire. Like you say, though, trying not to piss off the strongly religious and actually have a discussion and debate about some of the sillier ideas of the religions is quite a good idea.
Well, how tough was it for you to kind of outline the arc that you're taking Jesus on during this book? Because Jesus does kind of, have a kind of some personal growth.
Love it. I actually thought that was one of the nicest things about writing this book, is I feel like from the start of the book to the end of the book, Jesus is quite a changed person. Like where he is when he begins, he's he's more than a bit of a dick. He's a dick. By the time he gets to the end of the book, he is very different than where he started. He's doing things differently. And I like that idea of taking the character and moving them through an arc and changing them from where they were. God had a fairly similar character arc in the first book in terms of where he starts is quite disempowered and where he ends up is quite empowered. He's taken back his kingdom. He's taken back his control. He's still the same deity, but he's had an experience and he's moved on. I would agree that Jesus is quite a different character by the time he gets to the end of this book. And I think that's one of the most fun things about writing an interpretation of someone like Jesus in this way and actually moving him forward. I thoroughly enjoyed it. In terms of how do I plot this and how do I start, Only an Atheist started in the middle of the book with the scene where Jeffrey meets God. And from there, I had to go back to the beginning of the book and work out where it starts and then go forward and find the end. With Jesus, it was very much a case of I knew he was going to return to heaven and demand to go on this mission. I knew the general celebrity path he was going to try and take, because that felt like where his character would go. And I knew about the last third and what was going to happen to him then. I mean, that came to me pretty soon, that I knew that was where he would go. The rest of it, you just kind of figure out as and when you go. You start writing and just see where the characters take you.
So what is your personal experience with bureaucracy and how that kind of led to the way that heaven is structured?
So when I first started writing this book and started publicizing it, I have friends who work in academia. And one of the people I'm friends with who works in academia, he shared it with friends on Facebook, and one of them immediately responded with, well, this guy works in academia, clearly. And absolutely, since I've been a degree student, a PhD student, I have worked in academia for quite a few years. And I'm sure there's a great number of bureaucracies around the world who are particularly difficult. But when you work in academia, they seem it's a very difficult system to navigate. You need the help of the people who work there. You need their cooperation, because without them, you can't get the things you need to get done to get your research done. So I kind of structured the bureaucracy of heaven in the first book, and then again in this book, where he has to obtain information from the Earth station, the satellite in orbit where the angels live, who look over Earth. He has to get information out of that system, and it's not an easy thing to do. But I'm sure for anybody who's worked in even middle or large size corporations, they all have their bureaucratic environments. They all have the difficulties of trying to get information out of a system like that.
True. I mean, in America, the experience I can think of is like going to get your driver's license renewed.
Yeah.
And how sometimes you have to go to like 6 different places to get it done.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And we're going to talk about Jesus and his interstellar travels, but I wanted to do a quick live read, just take a little break here. We're about 30 minutes in. So this weekend is the American Atheist Convention in Oklahoma City. I'm missing out. A lot of my friends are there. I'm feeling jealousy raised to all of you. I'd love to go to the American Atheist Conference sometime, maybe 2019. But then again, ReasonCon is happening, and that's like the big conference for us folk in the know. I think we should get Matthew there. It's in like rural North Carolina, but trust me, it's pretty fun. So if you want to see fellow social justice-minded humanists, check out Secular Social Justice in Washington, D.C., April 7th. And then this conference just got funded. Secular Women Work will be August 24th to 26th in Minneapolis. Now, Jesus, the way the story is set up, it's like, okay, Jesus came to earth, died, undied, went to heaven, story over. But your story tells of Jesus doing what he did on earth on other planets.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to come up with that idea? And does Jesus always succeed in his quest?
No, Jesus doesn't always succeed. Sometimes things go very, very wrong. The bureaucracy we've been talking about in Only an Atheist, the way it's set up is the angels have taken control from God. They run the heavenly bureaucracy, and they look after the worlds under their purview. So it used to be that God was in charge, but unfortunately, God could no longer be trusted after dealing with the humans. We had plagues, we had famines, we had all sorts of wrathful occurrences, and so they stripped him of his power. That never happened with Jesus. Jesus is a guy who, although he's creation of God himself, as are the angels, he's slightly different in his mission is to go, as we discussed, and be a part of a civilization, to help steer the course of the civilization, and to very much be one of those peoples. So for him, Earth was just another mission in a very, very long list of missions. he has been any number of species on any number of worlds throughout his entire lifetime, which is a very, very long time. So, as you can imagine, he's quite a unique being. He's very experienced. He's used to doing what he does, but he's also something of a brat because he's the son of God. He can get what he wants done. He can demand whatever he wants to happen. So when he comes to Earth, he's a dick. He's not a very nice person. He's used to getting his own way. The way I saw the heavenly bureaucracy, I guess it's sort of like as someone who was raised on Star Trek: The Next Generation, it's kind of a Federation kind of thing where they're looking after the entire cosmos, but they're taking a more direct hand in everything rather than in Star Trek: Next Generation where they're not allowed to get directly involved. So they oversee things, they observe. They don't directly get involved because they're not allowed to, the angels, but Jesus is directly allowed to get involved. But he's also someone who's been shaped by the way his missions go. So for him, unfortunately, most of the missions he goes on result in his own death. I mean, in the Bible, we had the crucifixion. Most of the worlds he goes to, the best way he knows how to steer the course of a civilization is dying in the name of those peoples, in the name of a particular religion. And that involves his mortal form being killed. Now, he's not going to die in that circumstances because he has an immortal soul that is transposed back to heaven, and then he gets on with the next mission. But that inevitably comes with a certain amount of trauma, being killed in a variety of different ways on a variety of different planets. Unfortunately, I can't remember most of the examples I write in the book, the examples of which planets he's been to and how he died on said planet, but they're all in there for you to read and to enjoy. And yes, as you said, not all of them go that successfully. Some of them have resulted in interstellar diplomatic incidents where he's had to have been shuttled out by the angels, having gotten this person pregnant or having eaten this thing he shouldn't have eaten or something that he should have known better about. But over time, he's become less worried about doing the job well and just kind of getting it done and moving on. I can't really blame him given the life he's lived.
Well, for all the talk that you hear about, like the Bible, no one really brings up the fact that God kind of needs therapy. So what was it like? Because you created a God who actually ends up in therapy in the first book. What was it? Were you excited about writing about the concept of Jesus and God hanging out with a therapist and talking about feelings?
I love the idea that in the first book, by the end, God ends up in therapy because honestly, he's a very screwed up individual. The things he's done, the temper tantrums he's had throughout our history from the religious text that you can read and see what he's been doing. I really like the idea that what he is, and even though he's omnipotent, he's not able to cope with the day-to-day. In the second book, God is now in therapy and he's finding it a very enjoyable experience. He's getting a lot out of it. He's dealing with his issues. When it comes to the relationship that God has with his son, well, it's not great, to be honest. God's a troubled father who can't quite connect to his son. Jesus is a bit of a dick who doesn't really know how to talk to his dad. And then, as you said, Jesus has a fair amount of personal growth in this book. He moves on from where he was, and by the end of the book, his dad and him go into therapy together to try and hash out their issues. And I find that to be a very enjoyable situation as well. The idea of putting those two together in a room with a therapist and then trying to figure out what their issues are, how they would deal with them, whether they even can, I find that to be a lot of fun.
Well, in your universe, was when Jesus came to Earth like his first mission, or did he have ones before?
I never asked that question, actually. I don't know. And I would guess that he'd had a few by then, and this was one of a few, but maybe not that far into his career. Good question.
And I was also wondering, like, who's the mother in this case,
Of Jesus?
Since there's a father and there's a Jesus, but the mom doesn't seem, is gone.
Well, I mean, in the book, if he comes to Earth and he's reborn, it's Mary. It's the traditional route he goes in these works, as opposed to actually having a mother who creates him in the universe. I think God is both mother and father. He kind of brings everything into existence within this world and universe, and the difference between the angels, who are created by God to be bureaucratic or to serve his needs, and Jesus is his son, and has a small amount of God's cosmic essence himself imparted within. I never really thought about who his mother might be either.
See, these are things that could come up. See, I'm influencing the future right here. Look at me. I have so much power. Now, in the book, you do talk about Jesus having like divine energy that he's allowed to kind of show from time to time. Does Jesus use this divine energy to fight off STDs, but not necessarily for birth control purposes? What's the limit of divine energy when it comes to this?
Well, the thing about Jesus is
You're a scientist. You should have an answer.
Yeah, true. The thing about Jesus in this is even he only has so much control of these divine energies, and the heavenly bureaucracy would step in to prevent him from doing anything too spectacular. I mean, at the end of the first book, they step in to stop God talking to everybody. Metatron, who doesn't appear in this book but will be back for the next, actually takes direct action to stop God from speaking to the humans. Jesus' worry in this book is that if he were to use too much divine energy, it would come to the attention of angels and they would be forced to step in. So he tries to find other ways around that scenario. As for fighting STDs, I don't know whether that's something he would need to worry about. I can't imagine they would bother him too much. But the divine legacy he leaves behind in all the children he has, that is definitely an issue. The Jesus before this book doesn't really care about that. He would be quite happy leaving a world, leaving a bunch of kids and just running off. The Jesus we find by the end of the book is more involved in the lives of his kids and more concerned about what he has actually done. And with Lilith in the next book and the other children that he has procreated on his time in this world, that'll all be a part of what happens with his character in the next book. Although he won't be the focus, Lucifer and Lilith obviously will be the two main characters. He will be in the next book, and his legacy on Earth will be explored a little bit.
Now, have you said that you haven't started writing this book yet? You just have kind of an outline at this point?
I've written maybe 10,000 words, which is like a sixth. And it's like the starting bit, and then a few bits in later chapters, and a bit towards the midpoint or towards the end where I know a particular event happens. But I haven't written much more than that.
Yeah, this is like a little inside baseball for people.
Yeah.
It blows people's minds to know that like movies don't film in the order that they actually appear.
No, they don't.
And that writers don't write a book
no.
straight through. Like the first attempt I made, I had like a part in like the middle where I was like, I don't know what to do here. And then I skipped ahead and finished. And then I'm like, oh crap, I got to finish that part that I don't it involved someone being hospitalized. So I was a little bit of a show my future there. I eventually figured some of that parts out, but you have to know that kind of stuff. So we covered kind of book talk, but we gotta talk about some other stuff, because 2 years ago, we were young and innocent. America and England were totally stable and nothing bad was ever going to happen. And now things have kind of gone a bit off the rails.
Agreed.
For those of us in America, what is happening in England? So you had the Brexit vote, but I don't really know how it works in terms of, is it actually being implemented? Are you guys basically like going to create a wall so you can't ever interact with the rest of Europe?
Pretty much, I think, is the way it feels. We are currently negotiating the only instance I'm aware of in history where two entities in terms of nations and countries are now negotiating to be further apart than when they started. Usually you get a treaty, you get a discussion, you get a treaty chat, diplomatic relations are established, and then two countries move closer together. You establish trading relations, you establish immigration exchanges. Because of the way the Brexit vote, so David Cameron, who was our prime minister of a few years ago, called an unnecessary referendum to discuss the Europe matter, which is that we are a part of Europe, except a certain part of his party and a certain part of our press and a certain number of people don't want to be. So the referendum was called as a sop to his party, to certain parts of his party who were holding power over him. He said, support me and I'll give you the referendum. He then fought the referendum very badly and he lost. And as a result, he lost his premiership. He quit being prime minister. The Conservative Party then had a leadership contest that was very poor. And Theresa May emerged as the least worst candidate, which is not saying much.
Now, sounds a little bit like American politics.
Yeah. I can see that. She is a terrible prime minister. She does not know how to do anything. She does not know how to govern. She had advisors that came with her into number 10 who were very controlling, who were then kicked out when she called an unnecessary election and lost the election really badly. So the polls all said that she would win an election by a stonking majority. And then she could see a circumstance in which she could take control of the Brexit negotiations and do whatever she wanted. However, the social media aspect of it started to kick in. We've got a leader of the opposition whose name is Jeremy Corbyn, who is, they say he's a far left socialist. Most of his ideas are pretty mainstream. He's more like the Bernie Sanders of Labour. And most of what he says makes sense. Now, the establishment here, the papers, the television networks, they've gone after him pretty relentlessly over anything they can find to tar him with, because he's a genuine threat to their status quo. Theresa May then triggered the Brexit, the Article 50, which is we are leaving the EU in 2 years. And then since then, we have just had one series of fuck-ups after another by mostly Tory MPs, mostly Tory ministers. We have a foreign secretary in Boris Johnson who's a complete and total, he's not a lunatic because Donald Trump's a lunatic. He's completely useless. And now we're in a position where our economy is grinding to a halt. We have 1 year to go until the Brexit negotiations need to be in place. They're talking about a transition agreement where we would have another 2 years to add on to this period after this 1 year. So basically not a lot happens for the next 3 years. But it's all kind of just grinding everything down. Everything is about Brexit. Everything is about what happens next. I understand from my readings of the newspapers, from watching The Daily Show, The Opposition last week, tonight, and similar shows, that you guys have a similar situation with Trump where he's useless. Most of his staff have left. He's not getting anything done. And you just don't know where this is going to go from here.
Oh, there's we don't know where it's going to go. There's a podcast called Mueller, she wrote, and it's like a weekly coverage of what's happening. And it's impossible to keep up. Like, I feel like a large percentage of our articles are like, people aren't paying attention to this. It's because every day there's this crazy, we have never had a president who just decided to keep doing his business, and his business is definitely meshing with the governing of the country. And it's someone who didn't expect to be there. And it's showing how screwed up our politics are. It seems how parts of politics get that way. all by themselves. But it's like we really need. I really think we need a reboot, because it's like people are thinking like the Democrats are going to save us because we have these big midterms coming up, and it's like, sure, they can get the majority, but then the best thing they can do is impeach Trump, and we've done this twice in our country's history, but no one's actually been kicked out of office. Like, you get impeached, you do a trial, but then it's a 2/3 majority has to vote him out. And even if they do, then we have President Mike Pence. So is that better? Is that worse? That's an actual like politician who kind of knows what he's doing. It's just everybody in that, like anyone who would actually accept the job with this administration has got some issues more than usual, and it's not fun. No, it's not fun. That's why we talk about beer instead. Now, do you have a pub around you that's like the one that you've written about in your books?
No, I don't.
Talks about a corner pub, you know.
No, I don't. We have good pubs where we live. My wife and I have just moved to the north of the UK. We have a couple of very nice pubs where we live, but no, there's no pub that's actually the pub that they go to in my books.
Well, that's good to know. Well, what's it like over there? In England, England has a Church of England. We don't have a Church of America, but it's a much less religious country.
Yeah.
Is like Easter that big a deal for most of the people?
I think for the older generation it is, but for my generation and those younger than me, I really don't think it is. I think it's increasingly a matter of personal taste. I don't think most people who are my age or younger really worry too much about religion. I don't think it's a big part of their lives. We're increasingly secular, which I feel is a very, very good thing. And I feel like we're moving towards an age where we won't have much religion or any religion in our country. I don't think that's the way it is for you guys over
there. Trouble. Well, this is a beer question from Jeannie, because I'm very anti-hops in my beer. I just do not like the bitter flavor. What's your thoughts? Since there's like a style in English beer that's called bitter, I'm assuming you're probably okay with it.
Well, I have been on a journey from mainstream lagers and beers through, because I lived in Canada for 3 or 4 years. And over there I had Propeller, which was a local beer to Halifax. And they had a bitter and they had a porter, which was delicious. Moving back to the UK, I kind of moved towards English style bitters. So there's a beer called Bombardier, which I really enjoyed for a while. And then there was another one called Sea Fury, which was made by one of these large corporations. It was very nice, but it was made by a large corporation. And then gradually I've transitioned on to craft beers and pilsners and those kind of things. So I'm not drinking bitters as such. But like we were discussing earlier, and like we've said before, there's so much choice now. You can really just pick and choose. If you want to try something slightly different, you can get that. If you want to try something more mainstream. Personally, I'm ever becoming a bigger fan of hops, and I am planning on being a home brewer very soon. So buying my own hops and actually using them in the beer creation sounds great fun.
Yeah, it's much easier to be a home brewer. It seemed like you had to have an advanced chemistry degree to do it.
Not anymore.
And now there's like packages. It's almost like pods, with coffee, where you can have an individual cup of coffee that's like any style, and you can have like a system where you just put in your ingredients and hit a couple buttons and you have beer. Although I thought, I'm not.
So you're finding politics very depressing at the moment?
Yeah, I don't know. I still find a large percentage of people I know just wanting to do the la la la, I can't hear you, because they get tired of the negativity, and they try to pretend that what's happening now is just the Republican version of what was going on with Obama, and it's like, you guys are out of your minds. I mean,
yeah, they really
based on the news that you mentioned in your book, there's been these attacks on him for years, like he was this horrible, awful criminal that no one ever got. No one ever got, they never were arrested, or people haven't been under federal indictment. every single person that leaves the Trump administration.
The difference between the way the media in the US, and I mean, we're really talking Fox News here, we're really talking the right wing. The difference between the way they would relentlessly go at Obama for tiny little things.
It was like he wore a tan suit, and then he like didn't salute once.
Yeah.
And it was like, and then there was like, he actually like took his jacket off and was just wearing a tie and a shirt once, and it was like a big deal. And, oh, he plays basketball, and it's like, oh gosh, it was an impossible job. And I can't imagine what the press would have been like in an alternate universe where Hillary's president. Like, the attacks on someone for being a woman, and then just the fact that she had been like, people were ready to attack her for like 20 years. Like, it was just wasn't, we didn't have an option.
The way that the networks out there, the Fox News and the others, the way they defended Trump, despite the fact that behind them is all this shit going on that is far, far worse than anything that has ever gone on with Obama, with Hillary, I mean, even with Bill Clinton, it wasn't this bad. I mean, Jesus, are you trying to compare?
Anything that was claimed that Hillary did, Trump's done it and worse. And it's been, it shows where our evangelicals are. It's like, well, as long as the guy says he likes Jesus and is white, because clearly that's important, and is tall and is, I don't know if Trump has less hair than you do, but it's probably the case. And he's got that weird, thing going on. But politics. All right, we did politics. Now I want to, since we're getting close to the end, you do blog posts and you like to read like sci-fi and comic books. Is there like a book or something that you've read recently that you would like say, you gotta check this out?
Well, my last blog post was a review of Christopher Brookmeyer's A Place in the Darkness, or Places in the Darkness. So he's an author that I have very much enjoyed for the last 10 or 15 years. He's written detective novels, but they're very satirical, very comedy novels. They're very funny, featuring a character called Jack Parlabane, and they're very cutting. His latest one is all about a space station where they're building the future of humanity, but unfortunately the people who live there are quite seedy. They don't get paid enough, so they all have double second jobs where they are prostitutes, or they do all sorts of things that they would not, the governing body would not want them to be doing. But it all comes down to the fact that they're not being paid enough. Now, the best science fiction, in my opinion, is social commentary. And it's always social commentary about now. It's about where we are, where we're going, and what's going on. And this book is very much in that vein. It addresses issues of the way our societies work, both America, US, and others, and the way in which, if governments really wanted to fix things, they absolutely could. It would mean a fight with the rich and the corporations, but they could do it if they wanted to. They have a vested interest in not doing so, and that is a significant problem. I was talking earlier about oh no, it's gone out of my head, just popped out of my head. We were talking about earlier, and I was thinking that can be fixed if they wanted to. Oh, political parties in the UK and the US. They are unfortunately funded by the rich and the corporations, the Republicans, the Tories. And that means when these people come into power, they don't serve our interests. They serve the interests of those who fund them, which makes sense. The only way we get the political parties we want is by paying for them. The collapse of the unions in the 80s under Thatcher and Reagan led to the destruction, basically, of the parties that represented us then and our say in politics. We need a return. That's the first thing that needs to be fixed in both of our countries, is get politics back in the hands of the people. Now, we were talking about Jeremy Corbyn. He represents a step in that direction of returning power to the people, I really hope. And that's one of the reasons why they're fighting him so fiercely. Getting politics back into our hands and having the public pay for them, whether it's through public subsidies, whether it's through memberships, is the first step to putting things right again in both countries. We can't do that until that first thing happens. But they know this. The people in power, the rich, the corporations, all the other people who fund it, they know if they lose the power, they lose everything. So they will fight it tooth and nail, which is why Jeremy Corbyn and Bernie Sanders' rise was so interesting and so spectacular. That's the first thing that needs to be done. And that, unfortunately, getting that hurdle done will be the biggest part of that particular fight.
Yeah, that's one part that's going to be very interesting. Midterms in America coming up, because I'm seeing Democrats coming up like on the progressive side that are actually taking on the kind of centrist, moneyed, been in power for 50 years types.
Exactly.
And honestly, I find it just disgusting that all the people are like making money off the laws they pass. It's like, if you serve the public, serve the public. If you make any money off being like a politician, that money should go to the government. You get a salary, that's enough to live off of. These guys like, I mean, Paul Ryan, like super rich. It's like, no, I don't know about that. I think, yeah, people who are normal people have normal jobs. It'd be nice to see that. But it'll also be nice. You showed me before the show, probably not appearing on the show. What are your cats' names? Cat person. I'll show my cat shirt for the people watching. Real men love cats.
So yeah, that one is
Juno. That seems like a cat position right there.
And that one is Izzy.
Oh, look at that. So you said sisters, right?
Full sisters. Oh. Very, very nice. Very nice animals.
They're like, yeah, you guys can talk. We're just going to nap. Every single week, I try to do a show, and every week I forget that my listeners want to know, do you have a joke that you can share?
No, I wish you'd asked me in advance. I would have tried to find one.
Dang it. I guess that you can't just throw it on people. You just make it up on the spot. I thought authors could do that. No magic author powers.
No. Go read my books. They're full of jokes.
Exactly. Perfect. Well, we are near the end. So will there be like an audio version of the book? And of course, where can people find your books? And
so you can find the books on Amazon and on any platform. Smashwords, which is this multi-platform publishing thing, is amazing. It puts it in Nook and in Kindle and all the other places. It's really remarkable. You can get it on Amazon. So the books are Only an Atheist Can Help God Save the World, and Jesus Returns, Here He Comes Again, by Matthew James. My blog is onlyanatheist.wordpress.com. And if you want to hit me up on Twitter, I believe my handle is onlyanatheist1. If you find my books on Amazon, you can find all the information on there for my Twitter handle, for anything else you'd like to know. What was the other question?
Oh, didn't know if you were going to do an audiobook or not.
Yeah, that's the other question. I've been asked about this quite a few times, and I am really interested. And Smashwords have now created their own audiobook publishing platform. So I'm going to start looking into that soon, because I think that's something that would really work and would really connect with people. I just have to look into how much it costs. Because the thing about being an independent author, beyond publishing your own books and then promoting yourself by coming on shows such as yours, you also have to spend out on book covers and anything else that comes up. So you need to get a good book cover, because you need to attract people's attentions. And I've been very fortunate in the people who've made the covers for my books have done amazing work, and they've been very reasonably priced. But it's still outlay that you have that you may not get back if you don't sell enough copies. Audiobooks is something I'm very interested in. I've had people express interest, and I would really like to. I just need to figure out how I do so and how much it's going to cost. But hopefully in the future, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if they could do it kind of like a podcast. I mean, I have a microphone, and you have audio software you can download. I think Audacity is actually free, but then yeah, you'd probably end up having to get some kind of editor and throw in some music. You music people, you just amazed you can do that. Okay, well, if you want to support this show, be like Bobby, Hugh, Teody, and Jeannie, and go to patreon.com/Zachrilege, Zachrilege. I can spell it after a beer, so can you. Follow me on Twitter at Zachrilege, like the Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook, and send all guest ideas, feedback, anything to zachrilege.cast@gmail. I would like to thank Matthew for being on. I say tonight, it's the afternoon for me. It's almost evening there in England. I think we finally figured out the time difference, sort of, kind of. And I'll finish off, not going to preach, but I'm going to do a little, I like to change up my finale every time. So there's been a lot of back and forth lately in the atheist community between popular podcast and YouTube hosts and other popular podcast and YouTube hosts. I'm seeing the kind of measured discussion that make our government so beloved at the moment. Defend what you believe in, speak for those who can't speak for themselves, and be a bellwether for freedom, whatever that is. Let's try being adults for 5 minutes. Let's talk to each other, take that extra step. And I know it's a special holy day for many today, but for atheists, it's not. Maybe let people know that tomorrow when candy is half price. Talk to you next week.